I had a real disagreement with my business partner once, and when I look back at it, it probably taught me more about culture than pretty much anything else I've ever had to live through. It was about something that looked really small on the surface. It was about what we were allowed to do with what our clients told us. When you do the kind of work that we were doing, people let you in all the way. They tell you things that they would never say in a staff meeting or in front of their own board. In fact, they have to for the engagement to work. So a leader will sit across from you and admit the hire that they regret, or the part of the business that looks really healthy from the outside, but is quietly coming apart on the inside. That kind of access is rare and it's really powerful. And it only exists because the person across from you has decided that you're safe. The question that my partner and I ended up on opposite sides of was a simple one to ask, and I felt like a pretty hard one to answer. What are you allowed to do with that access? My partner saw all of it as material. If a client told us something in a moment of trust, that was information, and information had a use and value. It could shape the next conversation and set up the next resell or upsell before the client even named the need. From a pure growth standpoint, he wasn't wrong, and I want to be really fair with him about that. There was real money sitting in what those clients told us, and he could see it as clearly as anyone could. He was trying to build something, and he believed that using everything we knew was simply how you built it. I decided that some of those conversations should be sealed. That certain things the client said to me in confidence would never leave the room. It would never come back around later dressed up as some kind of sales angle. I'll tell you plainly, my partner did not like that line that I took. He felt I was leaving value on the table, and in a narrow way that he was measuring it, I was. I was choosing to give up leverage we genuinely had on purpose again and again. Now, I want to be clear about what that choice cost, because it's easy to tell a story like this as if the right answer was glowing in the dark the whole time, or if I was being noble. It wasn't that. Holding that line meant slower growth in some of our accounts. It meant watching real openings pass us by, openings that I could have walked straight through if I'd been willing to use what I knew. And it meant friction with the person that I had built the company beside over something that he believed was good business and good sense. Here's what I came to understand. And it is the entire reason I held on through that friction, no matter how hard it got. The moment a client senses that what they tell you will be turned around and used to sell them something, they stop telling the whole truth. Now, it doesn't happen all at once, just a little bit at a time. You get careful, or they start giving you kind of the cleaned up version. The vulnerability that made their words valuable in the first place dries up the instant that they feel that it's being mined. So the very thing my partner wanted to harvest could only keep existing as long as we refused to harvest it. Confidentiality was not me being great or precious about ethics. It was me protecting the one condition that kept people willing to tell me the truth at all. And I needed it. And use the trust, and you lose the trust. So I held the line quietly and consistently, conversation after conversation, year after year. And something happened that I didn't fully predict at the start. The trust between us and the people we served didn't just hold steady, it compounded. They told us more, not less. They brought us in earlier while their problems were still small and still relatively cheap to fix. And over time, that safety turned into the best referrals we ever got, because the people we served had learned, without us ever having to advertise it, that whatever they handed us stayed exactly where they put it. The confidentiality I had to fight for inside my own company quietly became the single most valuable asset that company owned. And it never appeared on one financial statement. Not once. That's what my book, Beyond the Numbers, is really about. And it's why I named the whole series of the books The Ripple Effect. One decision held quietly and repeated does not stay one decision. It ripples. A single line I drew about confidentiality turned into years of deeper trust and referrals that I really didn't even have to ask for. I could not have drawn that on a chart at the time. The most important things moving through that business were happening just underneath the numbers, where no report could actually see them. And the numbers I did see were only the echoes of choices like that one, landing months or even years later. I will tell you the harder part of all of this story too, because I'm all about trying to be transparent. The disagreement about confidentiality was one of the first times I felt that my partner and I wanted genuinely different things from the business we shared. It looked like a small policy difference, but underneath it was a real divide about what the company was for and whether the people who trusted us were partners to protect or accounts to work. That divide did not close. And in fairness, from the consulting perspective, my line was probably less effective. In fact, the divide widened over it eventually so that the partnership came to an end. The book actually opens on that ending of me sitting alone at a table, signing the papers that dissolved the relationship. So when I tell you this confidentiality story, I am telling you about one of the early cracks, the first place that I felt the ground move. I didn't know then where it was leading to, but it was powerful. And I don't tell you this to turn my old partner into a villain, because he wasn't. He wanted to grow a consulting business, and that is a fair and human thing to want. We simply believe different things about how trust works and what a business owes the people who rely on it. And after a lot of years, I've made real peace with all of what happened back then. Time has shown me that his purpose was never to wound me. We were two people who saw the same thing in two very different ways. Here's what I want you to take from this. Whatever kind of leader you are, doesn't matter. Culture does not get built in the easy moments when your values cost you nothing. It gets built in the expensive ones. Anyone will protect a value when it's easy and convenient. The thing that actually decides your culture is what you protect when protecting it costs your growth or the approval of the person who's standing right next to you. Your people are always watching which one you choose, and they are learning from it far faster than they learn from anything else. Every person inside that company was watching how that one disagreement resolved. They were learning in real time whether what we said about trust was something we met or just something we printed. The day I held that line and walked away from easy money, I was not only making an ethical call, I was teaching everyone around me what this place actually rewarded. And that lesson, repeated long enough, quietly becomes who we were. And if you're starting to see that your own culture is being shaped right now by what you protect and what you quietly let slide, whether you ever decided to or not, that's exactly the work I do with leaders inside Leaders Evolution. It's where we design the systems that make these calls on purpose instead of by accident. So the culture you end up with is the one you actually choose and design. The link is in the accompanying blog if you want to look. There's no contract, no sales call, just the work. I'll see you next time.